Today's topic is Don't Be Cattle. This is the Divorce to Dynamite podcast, and I am Michelle O'Neill. I remember when I was about 8 years old, and my mama and I were at the local H-E-B grocery store. Now, for those of you guys who are not from Texas, y'all don't know about the H-E-B grocery store. So us in Texas, we would tell you that H-E-B is the best grocery store in the entire world. Now, I know you people in Florida and the South would argue that Publix is, and I've been to a Publix, and I understand where you're coming from. I do like Publix, but H-E-B is still the best grocery store in the world. So whenever I was 8 years old, my mama shopped at H-E-B grocery store, and we went to the grocery store every single day. And back then, it was quite a while ago, and some of you watching this podcast may not remember back when we actually wrote checks to pay for things. Well, my mama would go in the grocery store every single day, and she would buy the groceries, and she would write a check for the groceries. Well, as things progressed in our country, and identity theft and fraud became a thing, one day she went in to buy her groceries, and the poor little clerk, I feel so bad for this little gal, this poor little clerk one day asked Mama for her social security number when she wrote her check. Well, my mama was a feisty one, let me just tell you. I wish y'all could have met her. She was a wonderful woman, but she was not one to just go along to get along. So when this poor little clerk asked her for her social security number on a Wednesday afternoon at the H-E-B store, where Mama had been yesterday and written a check without giving her social security number, and the day before, and the day before, and every day before that, Mama wasn't having any part of it. And Mama said, "Why do you need my social security number?" And this poor clerk was just doing her job, you know. And this clerk said, well, ma'am, we have to have it in order to take a check. And Mama said, "No, you don't. You didn't need it yesterday." Well, ma'am, we have to have your social security number because we need to know who you are. "Well, no, you don't. Me giving you a number doesn't tell you who I am." And this poor clerk pushed back, and Mama just got stirred up and got louder and louder and louder. And finally, Mama got so loud that she said, "Ma'am, why don't you just send Joe right on over here? I know Joe, and he is the manager, and I shop in this store every single day. And you just send Joe right on over here, and you tell Joe that he needs my social security number to get my check that he didn't need yesterday or the day before or the day before, and you have Joe just come right on over here and tell me he needs my check to take my check to get my groceries that I've gotten in here every day that I have gone in this store since y'all open." Well, poor Joe comes on over, and I'm just standing there, 8 years old, and I am just shrinking in horror because my mama is throwing what in Texas we would call a wall-eyed fit. Now, for those of you who aren't in Texas that don't know what a wall-eyed fit is, that is when one eye goes to that wall and one eye goes to that wall, and the fit goes through the roof. So over comes Joe, the manager, who knows it's Sandy Mae who is throwing this fit. Bless his heart, he's probably going, "Oh dear God, here we go." So here comes Joe, and he says, "Miss May, it's a new policy. We have to have your social because, you know, checks and fraud and whatever and whatever." And she continues her fit and gets louder and louder and louder. And I'm sure you've already guessed the fact that we walked out of that store. She gave her check, did not give her social security number, and we got our groceries. And we walk out of that grocery store, and we got about halfway out the parking lot to our car carrying our groceries. And she leaned down to me, and she smiled, and she winked, and she said, "Michelle, don't be cattle." And in that moment, I didn't really understand what she meant by "don't be cattle." And when we got in the car, I said, "Mama, I don't understand. What do you mean, don't be cattle?" She said, "Well, Michelle, Here in Texas, we have cows. And you know, when we drive home, we're going to drive by these fields where there's a bunch of cows. And if you notice, when the cows are hungry, the rancher, that's what you call the man who owns the cows, the rancher comes out in his truck and he has the hay in the back of the truck. And the cows are so well trained that when they see the rancher coming down the street and they know it's about time for dinner, the cows line up one behind the other in a straight line, one behind the other, heading toward the gate where the rancher is going to come in. And when they're one behind the other, they're following the leader all the way to the rancher. And you know what the view is of every one of those cows except the leader? And I said, no, Mama. And she said, the ass in front of them, Michelle. She said, Michelle, what you don't want to be in life is the cow who's following the ass in front of them, because then all the view that you've got in life is the ass in front of you. And so from that day forward, Mama's little wisdom in her special Texas way was anytime that she wanted me to understand that you shouldn't go along to get along, and sometimes you just got to buck the system, she would lean down to me and wink and smile and say, don't be cattle. Now, the lesson she was trying to teach me with that is that there are times in life where we should and have to go against the status quo. Sometimes in life, the status quo is not the right thing. Sometimes the status quo will not be leading you in the right direction. You know, there's a saying about lemmings, where lemmings just lead each other right off the cliff. One time, Mama was Comanche Indian. Now, I don't know how she knew she was Comanche Indian. She may have just decided this. But she told me this story one time about how Comanche Indians hunted, and they would go around the herd of bison and herd the herd of bison until they all ran off the cliff. And that was her way of saying that you basically don't want to be a part of the herd, right? So, you know, sometimes being a part of the herd, being a part of the status quo is not the way to go. So the reasons that you might want to go against the status quo, you know, you want to be true to yourself. Maybe your beliefs, maybe the thing you believe is the right thing to do. Your authenticity, your self-expression is not the thing that the group is doing. And so to be an example for others and to give others the courage not to go with a group, you got to go your own direction. Another reason that you might want to go against the status quo is to be the catalyst for change. Maybe the way things are going isn't the way things need to be going, and you see a different path, a better path. And one person has to be the one to go a different way, to be the catalyst, that little spark that'll make things different. So you be the catalyst to change, to create the opportunity for the new ideas, the new solutions that can then sway the opinions of the herd to go a different way. You can create that progress. A third reason you might want to go against the status quo is to encourage the courage. Encourage the courage. Going against the status quo requires courage and determination. It is not easy. The easy way, the lazy way, is to just go follow that ass in front of you all the way to the rancher's hay bale. But going against the status quo builds determination. It builds resilience, right? My mother's lesson in winking and telling me don't be cattle was to build the skill, to build in me the skill that would later become the foundation of my entire life, of my entire career. As a lawyer, I became an advocate for those who could not advocate for themselves. I became an advocate for people who could not fight for themselves. I became the strength for people who could not be strong. I had to be the one who challenged a judge to think differently so that my client's voice could be heard. And to do that, it requires determination and courage and resilience. It requires sometimes going against the herd. And so when my mama would lean down and wink at me and say, Michelle, don't be cattle, what she was saying to me is that when you follow the ass in front of you, you follow the tail of the cow that is leading the herd in front of you, what's eventually going to happen is you're going to follow that cow. And you know what happens to cows when you follow the ass in front of you? They eventually follow each other right into the truck that ends up going right into the slaughterhouse, that ends up right on your McDonald's hamburger with lettuce, tomatoes on a sesame seed bun. And that's not where you want to be. So let me just tell you, don't be cattle.